What happens when the only person who remembers who you truly are is the one who destroyed you? For Nora Ashland, life was a series of blank spaces and half-remembered dreams. The daughter of the Moonshadow Pack's chief healers, she'd grown up with gaps in her memory that no one could explain, or would explain. Her parents said she'd been sick as a child, that the fevers had stolen pieces of her past. But sometimes, in the space between sleeping and waking, Nora remembered things that felt too vivid to be lost, the sensation of immense power coursing through her veins, the sound of her own voice commanding storms, the weight of a destiny that made the earth tremble. Then she'd wake, and the memories would slip away like water through her fingers, leaving only the scent of lavender and morning dew clinging to her skin and the certainty that something vital had been taken from her. But when Alpha King Darius Blackthorn stood before the assembled packs at the Summit of Unity and rejected her as his fated mate, not because he didn't remember her, but because he remembered too much, everything changes. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. The summit happened once every 5 years, when the 7 packs of the Northern Territories gathered to renew treaties, settle disputes, and celebrate their shared heritage under the full moon. This year, it was the Moonshadow Pack's honor to host, and Nora's parents had worked themselves to exhaustion preparing. Hundreds of wolves descended on their territory, filling the great lodge with the mingled scents of pine forests, mountain streams, and dominant power. Nora had tried to make herself invisible, as she always did. At 23, she was the weakest wolf in a pack of fighters and politicians, an Omega whose wolf was so buried, so silent, that most pack members forgot she could shift at all. She spent her days in the healing gardens, growing herbs and mixing salves, her hands always gentle, her voice always soft. The scent of lavender and wildflowers followed her everywhere, marking her as harmless, forgettable. She'd been content with that, or at least she'd convinced herself she was. The bonding ceremony took place on the 3rd night, when unmated wolves gathered in the ceremonial circle to see if the moon goddess had chosen any fated pairs. Nora attended only because her mother insisted, dressing her in pale blue silk that made her look even more insubstantial than usual. "You never know," Mira Ashland had whispered, adjusting Nora's silver collar, the mark of an unmated wolf. "The goddess works in mysterious ways." Nora's father, Aldrich, had said nothing, but his scent, usually warm cedar and honey, carried an edge of something sharp and bitter. Anxiety, Nora thought, or guilt. The ceremonial circle was packed with wolves from all 7 packs. Alphas and betas dominated the center, their powerful frames and confident postures declaring their status. Omegas lingered at the edges, hoping, but not expecting. Nora found a spot near the back, half hidden behind a stone pillar. Then he arrived. Darius Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, supreme commander of all 7 packs, entered the circle, and the world seemed to hold its breath. He was massive, 6.5 feet of pure dominance wrapped in black leather and steel. His scent hit Nora like a physical force. Dark forest and dying embers and ozone and cold steel, the smell of storms and battlefields and absolute authority. At 35, he had held his position for over a decade, having challenged and defeated 3 previous Alpha Kings to claim his throne. His eyes were silver, not the warm gray of moonlight, but the cold, reflective silver of blades and ice. Scars marked his face and arms, testaments to countless battles. He was beautiful in the way that winter was beautiful, stark, dangerous, lethal. Nora couldn't look away. And then, impossibly, inexplicably, his silver eyes found hers across the crowded circle. The bond snapped into place. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't the romantic meeting of souls that the stories described. It was a cataclysm, a cosmic collision that sent golden light blazing between them so bright that wolves shielded their eyes. Nora felt it wrap around her heart, sink into her bones, claim every part of her with the possessive certainty of fate itself. The pain of it drove her to her knees. Through the agony and the light, she saw Darius go rigid, his face draining of color before flushing dark with fury, his lips pulled back in a snarl that showed too many teeth. "No," he said, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "Not you. Not again." Again? But Nora had never met him before. She would remember, wouldn't she? The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. The other Alpha Kings, there were 3 present, stepped forward, their expressions ranging from shock to calculation. Darius, one of them said carefully, the moon goddess has spoken, the bond. I don't care. Darius descended from the platform, each step measured and deliberate. Wolves scattered out of his path. His scent had gone sharp with rage and something else, something that tasted like old pain and bitter recognition. I won't make the same mistake twice. He stopped in front of Nora, towering over her kneeling form. This close, she could see the way his hands trembled with barely controlled violence, could smell the complex layers of his emotions, fury, yes, but also grief, loss, regret, and beneath it all, impossibly, longing. I know you, Nora whispered. The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere the memory blocks couldn't quite reach. Don't I? Something flickered in his silver eyes. For just a moment, his expression softened, and Nora saw the ghost of tenderness there. Then it hardened into cold determination. You did, he said quietly. Once, a lifetime ago. He straightened, his voice rising to carry across the circle. I, Darius Blackthorn, Alpha King, of the Northern Territories, reject you, Nora Ashlyn, as my fated mate. I sever this bond in the sight of the moon goddess and the assembled packs. You are released from all claims, all obligations, all connections to my throne. Wait, Nora gasped, reaching for him even as the first wave of pain hit. I don't understand. You don't remember, and that's exactly how your parents wanted it. His eyes blazed silver. But I remember everything, and I won't be a fool for you again. The rejection completed with the force of a thunderclap. The golden bond between them didn't just break, it exploded, shards of light and magic tearing through Nora's chest like shrapnel. She screamed, her body convulsing as the mystical connection was violently severed. It felt like her soul was being ripped in half, like every good thing inside her was being burned away. Through the agony, she heard a woman laugh, sharp and cold, the sound cut through even Nora's pain. Seraphina Vale stood at Darius's side, her beauty sharp enough to cut. Silver-white hair cascaded down her back, and her eyes, pale green like poisoned ice, glittered with satisfaction. She was a high-ranking beta from the Stormcrest pack, ambitious and cruel, and her scent of cinnamon and iron and fresh blood made Nora's stomach turn. Poor little Omega, Seraphina purred, her hand possessively on Darius's arm. Did you really think the Alpha King would want someone like you? Darius didn't correct her, didn't pull away. He just stood there, cold and immovable as a mountain, while Nora's world ended. Guards appeared, massive warriors from Darius's personal detail. They lifted Nora from the ground as her legs refused to support her weight. Remove her, Darius ordered, already turning away. Beyond the borders, she's no longer under pack protection. Your Majesty, Nora's father stepped forward, his face ashen. Please, the winter. She won't survive. Then she should have been stronger. Darius's voice was flat, emotionless. Or perhaps you should have told her the truth before it came to this. What truth? Nora managed to gasp, but no one answered. Her mother stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't move to help. Didn't protest. Just stood there with her arms wrapped around herself, the scent of her guilt so strong it made Nora's eyes water. The guards dragged Nora through the crowd as hundreds of wolves watched in silence. Some looked away in shame, others stared with morbid fascination. A few, very few, showed pity in their eyes, but none of them helped. They took her to the northern border, to the edge of the territory where the cultivated lands gave way to true wilderness. Beyond the marker stones lay the howling waste, a stretch of frozen forest and barren plains where winter came early and stayed late, where temperatures dropped so low that exposed flesh froze in minutes. I'm sorry, one of the guards murmured as they released her. He was younger than the others, his face troubled. For what it's worth. Then they were gone, and Nora was alone. The storm hit within the hour, not a gentle snowfall, but a howling blizzard that turned the world into a white void. Nora stumbled forward because stopping meant dying faster. The bond wound in her chest throbbed with every heartbeat, a constant reminder of what she'd lost, or what she'd never really had. "You don't remember," Darius had said. "I remember everything." What was she supposed to remember? What had her parents done? The cold was merciless. Within minutes, Nora lost feeling in her hands and feet. Within an hour, her body was shaking so violently she could barely walk. Her wolf, that distant, silent presence, didn't stir. Couldn't stir. Whatever was keeping her buried remained locked tight, even in the face of death. Nora found shelter in the ruins of an old watchtower, half collapsed and open to the elements. But it was something. She huddled in the least exposed corner, trying to preserve body heat that was rapidly abandoning her. "This is it," she thought with odd clarity. "This is how I die." She thought about her parents, about the gaps in her memory, about the way they'd always kept her close, always monitored what she ate and drank, the bitter teas they'd given her every new moon, claiming they were for her health. She thought about Darius's words. "I won't be a fool for you again." Again implied a before, implied history, implied something stolen. What did they take from me? Her wolf stirred, just barely, just enough to brush against her consciousness with something that felt like agreement, like validation. "They took everything," the voice whispered, so faint Nora almost missed it. "But not forever. Never forever." Then the darkness took her, and Nora knew nothing at all. Warmth. That was the first thing Nora registered as consciousness slowly returned. Warmth and the steady rhythm of breathing that wasn't her own. She forced her eyes open, and for a long moment couldn't process what she was seeing. Wolves. Enormous wolves, each one easily twice the size of the largest alpha she'd ever seen, surrounded her in a protective circle. Their body heat created a cocoon of warmth that had literally saved her life. Nora counted them through her confused haze. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 massive wolves with fur in shades of midnight black, storm gray, russet brown, and purest white. Their eyes, when they turned to look at her, glowed with an otherworldly light. Gold and silver and violet and green, colors that shouldn't exist in wolf eyes but did. The scent of aged oak and winter snow and pine and approaching storms filled the air, along with 9 other distinct signatures: smoke and starlight, earth and rain, fire and ice, and more. Together, they created a symphony of power that made her head spin. The largest wolf, the one whose scent of oak and snow dominated, raised his massive head. His eyes were the pale blue of glacial ice, ancient and knowing. "We've been waiting for you," a voice said directly into her mind, rich and deep and infinitely patient. Nora's breath caught. "What? Who are you?" The wolf rose, and the shift was the most graceful thing Nora had ever seen. One moment, wolf. The next, man. He was older than Darius, perhaps 40, with silver-streaked dark hair and a beard that couldn't hide the prominent scar running from his ear to his collarbone. His bare chest and arms were marked with dozens of scars, each one telling a story of survival. Despite the freezing temperature, he seemed unbothered by his nakedness. "My name is Corvus Ironwood," he said, his voice matching the one from her mind. "I lead the Shadowborn, the 10 guardians sworn to serve the Heartkeeper." His ice-blue eyes held hers steadily. "We serve only you. You have the wrong person." Nora tried to sit up and failed, her body still recovering from near death. "I'm nobody. I'm just an Omega whose own mate didn't want her. Darius Blackthorn is many things, a warrior, a king, a fool. But he's not your mate." Corvus settled onto the cold ground as if it were a comfortable chair, and immediately one of the other wolves, a beautiful female with pure white fur, shifted and draped a cloak over his shoulders. She then wrapped Nora in a second cloak, the fur-lined fabric blessedly warm. The female was stunning, with silver hair and intricate braids and warm amber eyes. Her scent of honey and summer rain was comforting, maternal. "I'm Lyanna," she said softly, "and before you protest again, please listen to what Corvus has to say. Your life depends on it." "Darius was your mate once," Corvus continued, 5 years ago, at the last summit. The bond formed then, just as powerful as what you felt tonight. But you were different then. Powerful, confident. Your wolf wasn't buried. She was magnificent. You were the Heartkeeper awakened, and you and Darius were meant to unite the territories, to usher in a new age. Nora's head was spinning. I don't remember any of this. Because it was taken from you. Corvus's expression darkened. After the bond formed, before the mating could be completed, something happened. There was an attack, a betrayal, and in the chaos you were injured. Your parents convinced Darius that you'd died. They performed a ritual, dark forbidden magic, that bound your power, erased your memories, and let them take you home as if you'd never awakened at all. But why? Nora whispered. Why would they do that? Fear. This came from another wolf who'd shifted, a man with copper skin and eyes that shifted colors with the light. He had the lean build of a runner, and intricate tattoos covered his arms. I'm Ash, he said, and we've spent 5 years searching for you, following prophecies and rumors. Your parents feared your destiny. They feared losing you to war, to politics, to the weight of what you were meant to become. So they tried to unmake you. There's a prophecy, Lyanna added gently. Very old. It says, when silver moon meets shattered crown, the Heartkeeper shall wake from death itself. Born of starlight, forged in betrayal's fire, she will rise when all hope has turned to ash. Her touch will heal the broken bonds. Her voice will call the lost children home, and in her hands the fate of all Pax rests. The shattered crown, Corvus said. That's you, rejected, cast out, broken. But rejection doesn't destroy a Heartkeeper's power. It unleashes it. As if his words were a trigger, Nora felt something move inside her chest, not the bond wound that still ached with dull persistence, something else, something vast and ancient and utterly hers. Her wolf. Hello, the voice said, clear and strong, and nothing like the whisper from before. I've been waiting so long to speak with you properly, Nora gasped. I can hear her. The binding magic your parents used was tied to pack bonds and mate bonds, Corvus explained. When Darius rejected you, when the mate bond shattered, it shattered the binding as well. Your power is waking, Nora. Your wolf is returning, and soon you'll remember everything. Even as he spoke, images began flooding Nora's mind. Not gentle memories, but violent returns. 5 years of stolen time crashing back in waves that made her head pound and her vision blur. She remembered the first summit, remembered being powerful, her wolf strong and proud, remembered the moment she and Darius first locked eyes, the bond forming with the force of destiny itself. Remembered the way he'd smiled at her, really smiled, with warmth and wonder and hope. She remembered him courting her over 3 days, remembered conversations that lasted until dawn, remembered the way his scent would soften when he was near her, the steel edge melting into something warmer. She remembered the attack. Rogues, dozens of them, crashing the final ceremony. Remembered fighting, her power blazing as she defended the vulnerable wolves. Remembered pain and blood and darkness. And then, nothing. Waking up in her parents' home with gaps in her memory and a wolf that wouldn't speak. He thinks I abandoned him, Nora whispered. He thinks I chose this. He thinks your parents hid you to keep you from him, Corvus corrected. And he's not entirely wrong. But he doesn't know about the memory binding, doesn't know they tried to erase who you are. He just knows that the mate he'd begun to love disappeared. And when he finally found you again, you didn't remember him. So he rejected me first. Nora felt tears burn her eyes. Before I could hurt him again. Darius Blackthorn is a survivor, Lyanna said gently. He protects himself the only way he knows how, with walls and distance and preemptive strikes, but that doesn't make what he did right. The shift began without warning. One moment Nora was human, the next her body was flowing into a new form. There was no pain, just a strange sensation of release, like shrugging off a coat that had been too tight for too long. Her bones didn't crack, they flowed, reshaping themselves with liquid grace. Fur emerged, not growing but unfurling, rich russet brown that darkened to black along her spine and lightened to cream at her chest. Power flooded through her, vast and ancient and utterly right. She grew and grew and grew. When the transformation completed, Nora stood on four legs for the first time in 5 years. She was massive, larger than Corvus, larger than any alpha she'd ever seen. Her paws were the size of dinner plates, her shoulders broad and powerful. Energy radiated from her in visible waves, golden light that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. She caught her reflection in a patch of ice and saw her eyes, no longer the soft brown of her human form, but glowing violet, the color of twilight and magic and ancient power. "This is who we are," her wolf purred with deep satisfaction. "This is who we've always been." Nora threw back her head and howled. The sound rolled across the frozen landscape like thunder, shaking snow from trees and sending small avalanches cascading down distant mountains. It was a declaration, a challenge, a promise. The Shadowborn immediately shifted to their wolf forms and joined the howl, 10 massive voices harmonizing with hers in a symphony of power that could be heard for miles. When the echo finally faded, Corvus shifted back to human form and knelt in the snow. "She is the Heart Keeper," he said reverently. "She is risen." The days and weeks that followed were a blur of training and discovery. Corvus's pack had established a camp in a hidden valley deep in the howling waste, where ancient magic kept the worst of the winter at bay. It was beautiful, a small village of sturdy cabins surrounding a central lodge, with hot springs that never froze and trees that grew year-round. "The Heartkeeper's Sanctuary," Corvus explained, "built by the first of our order, maintained by magic and will. It's been waiting for you." Learning to control her shift was the first challenge, and it was harder than Nora expected. Her power wanted to burst free at every strong emotion, wanted to proclaim itself to the world. "You're not suppressing it anymore," Ash explained during one particularly frustrating session where Nora had shifted accidentally for the 4th time in an hour. "You're learning to direct it. Big difference." Ash was patient and clever, with a gift for finding unconventional solutions. His scent of wood smoke and starlight never changed, even when he was frustrated, and he had a dry sense of humor that made even failure bearable. The rest of the Shadowborn were equally remarkable. Rowan, the weapons master, built like a warrior from legend, with scars on every visible inch of skin and a surprisingly gentle touch when teaching. His scent of steel and thunder matched his personality perfectly. Alara, not to be confused with the Alara from another, Pax Legends. This Alara was a quiet, deadly fighter with red hair and green eyes that saw everything. Her scent of sage and snow was calming, and she taught Nora how to move silently despite her size. Kieran and Declan, twin brothers who spoke in tandem and fought as one unit. Kieran smelled of earth and rain, Declan of fire and ash, and together they were unstoppable. Sienna, wild and beautiful, with bronze skin and eyes that glowed gold even in human form. Her scent of cinnamon, not iron like the villain, and wild roses marked her as the pack's best tracker. Marcus, the eldest after Corvus, with gray hair and wise eyes, who served as their historian and strategist. He smelled of old parchment and pine, and he could recite prophecies dating back centuries. And Iris, the healer, soft-spoken and infinitely patient, whose touch could ease pain and speed healing. Her scent of chamomile and moonlight made everyone around her feel safe. They became her family, her true pack. But it was Corvus who became something more. It happened gradually, the way his hand would linger on her shoulder when correcting her stance, the way his scent would deepen when she entered a room, the way he watched her with an intensity that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with want. One night, after a particularly successful training session where Nora had finally managed to hold her shift for a full hour, Corvus asked her to walk with him. They climbed to the highest point in the valley where you could see stars reflected in the hot springs below. "You're ready," he said quietly. "Your control is solid. Your power is stable. If you wanted to, you could reclaim your place in the world tomorrow." "But," Nora prompted, hearing the unspoken word. "But you don't have to. The Heartkeeper's role isn't about ruling through dominance like the Alpha Kings do. It's about creating sanctuary, about healing bonds that have been broken, about giving wolves a place to belong." He turned to face her. "You could stay here, build something new, something better." "And you?" Nora asked softly. "What would you do?" Whatever you needed me to do. His ice-blue eyes held hers steadily. I've been alive for 63 years, Nora. I've fought in wars, led armies, served kings, but I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Corvus, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. You've been through an enormous trauma. You're still healing. I just wanted you to know that when you're ready, if you're ready, I would be honored to court you, to earn the right to stand beside you. Nora felt her heart swell. This was nothing like the fated bond with Darius that had been imposed by destiny, a connection forced on both of them whether they wanted it or not. This was choice, pure, simple choice. I'd like that, she whispered, very much. His smile was like sunrise breaking over mountains. They were careful, taking things slowly. Corvus courted her with old-fashioned formality, bringing her flowers from the valley, cooking meals for just the two of them, teaching her the old songs and stories of the Shadowborn. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other's minds as thoroughly as their wolves knew each other's scents. And when they finally kissed, 3 weeks after that first conversation, it felt like coming home. But peace, in the world of wolves, never lasted long. It started with Alara's warning. She'd been scouting the perimeter when she caught a familiar scent, Moonshadow Pack wolves far beyond their usual territory. They're tracking something, she reported, her face grim. Or someone. They know I'm alive, Nora said flatly. It wasn't a question. More than that, Rowan had been on the same patrol. They've mobilized a war party, at least 25 wolves, all skilled fighters, and Darius is leading them personally. Of course he is. Nora felt her wolf stir with anticipation rather than fear. He can't let me live. I'm proof of what he threw away, proof that he made a mistake. You're proof that he's fallible, Corvus corrected, his voice cold with barely restrained anger. And for an Alpha King, that's worse than any crime. Seraphina is with them too, Lyanna added, having shifted from her scouting mission. She's leading the advance guard. The beta who'd mocked Nora at her rejection. Of course she'd want to be present for the kill. We can't fight them, Nora said, though her wolf disagreed vehemently. 25 against 11. 10, Corvus interrupted. You're not fighting. Actually, I am. Nora let her power rise, let her eyes flash violet. I'm done running. I'm done hiding. If Darius wants me dead, he can face me himself. But I won't cower behind any of you. Corvus looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her voice, the command she'd been practicing, woven with absolute certainty, stopped him. Together then, he said finally, but we do this strategically. They chose the battlefield carefully, a wide, frozen lake at the border of the valley, where the ice was thick enough to support weight, but cracking would be audible. No cover for ambush, no place to hide. Darius's war party arrived at sunset, 25 wolves in perfect formation. They shifted to human form as they approached, and Nora had to admit they were impressive, warriors all, with the confidence of wolves who'd never lost a battle. Darius stood at the center, as magnificent and terrible as she remembered. Seraphina flanked his right, her beauty sharp as broken glass. Her cinnamon iron blood scent was thick with anticipation. Nora Ashlyn, Darius called across the frozen lake. His voice was carefully neutral, but his scent betrayed him, ozone and steel sharp with conflict. You were cast out. You were told to never return to Pack lands. Yet here you are, barely a month later, within striking distance of 3 different territories. We're in neutral. Lands! Nora called back, pleased that her voice stayed steady. And I have no interest in any of your territories, Darius. Let us go in peace. Peace? Seraphina laughed, the sound like breaking ice. You're a loose end, little Omega. The longer you live, the more people will question His Majesty's judgment. Then the problem is his judgment, not my existence. Darius's jaw clenched. You deceived me once. You made me believe in something that wasn't real. You won't get that chance again. I deceived you? Nora felt anger rise like a tide, 5 years of stolen memories fueling the fire. You self-righteous bastard, I didn't deceive anyone. My parents bound my power, erased my memories, tried to unmake who I was, and you never even looked for the truth. You just assumed I'd abandoned you and moved on. Something flickered in his silver eyes. What are you talking about? I'm talking about dark magic and memory binding. I'm talking about waking up with gaps in my mind and a wolf that wouldn't speak. I'm talking about living as half a person for 5 years while you sat on your throne and convinced yourself you were the victim. Her power was rising now, violet light dancing across her skin. You want to kill me, Darius? Fine, but at least have the courage to admit what you're really afraid of. I'm not afraid of you, he snarled, but his scent said otherwise. You're terrified of me. Because if I'm telling the truth, if I really was bound and controlled and manipulated, then you rejected your actual mate based on lies and assumptions. You threw away your destiny because you were too proud to investigate, too wounded to trust. She stepped forward onto the ice. You didn't just make a small mistake, Darius. You destroyed both our lives. Enough! Seraphina shifted mid-leap, her silver wolf hurtling toward Nora with claws extended and fangs bared. Nora met her with casual ease. Her own shift was instantaneous now, controlled, perfect. One moment she was human, the next she was her massive wolf form, meeting Seraphina's attack with a single swipe of her enormous paw. The beta wolf flew backward, crashing into the ice with a yelp of shock and pain. She tried to rise, but Nora was already standing over her, violet eyes blazing. Stay down, Nora commanded mentally, pushing the words directly into Seraphina's mind. I won't tell you twice. The beta wolf went utterly still, every instinct screaming submission. The frozen lake had gone completely silent. Impossible, someone whispered. But Nora wasn't done. She threw back her head and howled, not a cry for help but a summons, and the Shadowborn answered. 10 massive wolves emerged from the tree line, and Darius's warriors collectively stepped back. Because these weren't just large wolves, they were something else entirely. Dire wolves from the old stories, guardians of ancient magic, each one radiating power that made even alphas feel small. Corvus's wolf form was larger than Nora had seen before, towering over every wolf present. Rowan was a mobile mountain of muscle and fury. The twins moved like shadows made flesh. Lyanna's white wolf glowed with an inner light that was almost painful to look at directly. Dire wolves, one of Darius's advisors breathed, the Shadowborn from the prophecies. They're real. They're hers, Corvus rumbled, his voice carrying even in wolf form. He stood beside Nora, protective and proud. Darius stared at Nora, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked uncertain. His silver eyes moved from her massive form to the Shadowborn, to Seraphina still pinned beneath Nora's paw, and finally back to Nora herself. What are you? He asked hoarsely. I'm what I was always meant to be. Nora shifted back to human form, and immediately Lyanna brought her a cloak. I'm the Heartkeeper, the one from your nursery rhymes and old legends, the one who was supposed to stand beside you and heal the broken bonds between packs. She met his eyes steadily. And you rejected me. Twice. Understanding and horror dawned in his expression. The prophecy. Oh, gods. You wanted to kill me because I was an inconvenient reminder of your mistakes, Nora continued. But I'm giving you a choice now, Darius, because I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in justice. Slowly, incredibly, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories sank to his knees on the frozen lake. Mercy, he said, his voice breaking. I beg mercy for my pack. They followed my orders. This mistake is mine alone. It would be so easy to refuse, so easy to let the Shadowborn tear through his forces, to make him suffer the way she'd suffered. Nora felt her wolf's hunger for vengeance, felt the rightness of retribution singing in her bones. But vengeance wasn't what the world needed. It wasn't what she needed. You will return to your territories, Nora said, her voice carrying across the frozen lake. You will call a gathering of all 7 packs, and you will tell them the truth, all of it. That 5 years ago, the Heartkeeper awakened. That you were her fated mate. That she was hidden from you by magic and manipulation. That when she returned, you rejected her out of pride and fear. They'll challenge me, Darius said hollowly. I'll lose my throne. Maybe. Or maybe they'll see that even the mighty can make mistakes and learn from them. But that's not my concern. She let her power rise, violet light blazing from her eyes. My concern is making sure this never happens again. These lands and the 4 territories surrounding them are now under my protection. Any wolf who needs sanctuary, Omega or Beta or Alpha, rejected or rogue or running, will find it here. Anyone who harms a wolf for being weak, anyone who casts out a packmate to die, anyone who uses their rank to abuse those beneath them, they answer to me. She looked at Seraphina, who'd managed to slink back to Darius's side. You found joy in my humiliation. You mocked me when I was at my lowest. Seraphina had the grace to look ashamed. You thought you could take what wasn't yours. You thought rank and beauty gave you the right to be cruel. Nora's voice was cold. You're stripped of your Beta rank. You'll serve as an Omega in the Stormcrest Pack for 2 full years. You'll learn what it means to be powerless, to be dismissed, to be treated as less than. And if, at the end of those 2 years, you've shown genuine growth and made genuine amends, your rank can be reconsidered. Seraphina's face went through several emotions before settling on bitter acceptance. As you command, Heartkeeper. Nora turned back to Darius. I don't hate you. I probably should, but I don't. You were hurt and afraid, and you lashed out. I understand that. But understanding doesn't mean I'll forget or that there aren't consequences. I know. His silver eyes held hers, and for the first time, she saw genuine remorse there. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You deserved better. You deserved everything. I know, Nora said simply. And I found it. Not in destiny or fate, but in choice. In a pack that chose me, and a mate I chose for myself. She felt Corvus move to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. The warmth of his touch, the steadiness of his presence, was everything she needed. Take your wolves and go, Darius. Remember what I said. Truth, justice, and sanctuary for those who need it, if I hear otherwise. She let her eyes flash violet. The Shadowborn and I will return, and next time, mercy won't be on the table. Darius rose slowly. He looked at Corvus, then at Nora, then at their joined hands. Something complex passed through his expression. Regret, acceptance, maybe even a hint of genuine happiness for her. He's a good male, Darius said quietly. Treat her well, Ironwood. With my life, Corvus replied, his voice a promise. They watched as Darius's war party retreated. 25 wolves who'd come for a slaughter, leaving with a story that would change the territories forever. When they were gone, Nora finally allowed herself to tremble. The adrenaline crashed, and she might have fallen if Corvus hadn't been there to catch her. I've got you, he murmured, lifting her easily. Always. In the months that followed, Nora's sanctuary grew. Word spread, the Heartkeeper had risen, and she offered protection to any who needed it. Wolves began arriving, Omegas cast out by their packs, Betas fleeing corrupt Alphas, even a few Alphas who wanted to serve something greater than their own ambition. They built a true community, one where rank mattered less than character, where strength was measured in kindness as much as combat, where every wolf had a voice and a choice. And when Nora and Corvus completed their chosen mate bond under the light of the full moon, the mark that appeared over their hearts, a silver tree with roots that dug deep and branches that reached skyward, declared to all who saw it. They had chosen each other, and that choice was sacred. Her parents came eventually. They arrived at the border with heads bowed and hearts heavy with guilt. Through tears they explained their fear, their desperation, the terrible choice they'd made to keep her safe by keeping her small. Nora didn't forgive them immediately. Some wounds needed time. But she gave them a chance to prove their remorse through actions, assigned them to work in the sanctuary's healing center, where they could rebuild trust one patient at a time. Darius kept his word. He called the gathering, told the truth, and faced the challenges that came. He survived, barely, and emerged a different leader, humbled, wiser. He sent regular reports to Nora, updating her on reforms he was implementing, laws he was changing, protections he was establishing for vulnerable wolves. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was progress. And when the blood moon rose 6 months after her awakening, painting the sky crimson and waking something ancient and hungry in the deep places of the world, Nora stood on the highest peak of her sanctuary with the Shadowborn at her back and Corvus beside her. It's starting, Marcus said quietly, his enhanced senses picking up the distant sound of something massive approaching. The second prophecy. Corvus squeezed her hand. Whatever comes, we face it together. Nora smiled, fierce and unafraid. She'd been broken and reborn. She'd been rejected and redeemed. She'd died and risen stronger than before. Let it come, she said, her violet eyes scanning the crimson horizon. We'll be ready. And so, Nora's journey as the Heartkeeper truly began. A journey from forgotten to found, from powerless to powerful, from a girl who believed she was nothing to a woman who knew she was everything the world needed her to be. She learned that true strength came not from dominance, but from compassion, that the most powerful bonds were those forged by choice rather than fate, and that being broken was sometimes necessary to become unbreakable. Her story became legend. Songs were sung about the Omega who became the Heartkeeper, about the Alpha King who rejected destiny and learned humility, about the Shadowborn who followed prophecy into the frozen waste and found their salvation waiting. But more than legend, her story became hope. Hope for every wolf who'd been told they were lesser. Hope for every soul who'd been cast aside. Hope that even when memories are stolen and bonds are broken, the truth of who you are can never be fully erased. What do you think happens when the Blood Moon's threat finally arrives? Would you have shown Darius mercy, or would you have chosen differently? And if someone stole your memories, what would be the one thing about yourself that could never be erased? If this story moved you, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you'd want to see next. Should we explore the Blood Moon confrontation? Dive deeper into Nora and Corvus's relationship? Maybe explore one of the other Shadowborn's backstories? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. There's so much more to discover in this world, the other territories, the ancient magic, the deeper prophecies still waiting to unfold. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this journey. We'll see you in the next chapter.